Hello everyone, welcome to session 2 of module 6, Effective Use of Tools, Potential Benefits and Risks. So in this session we will cover about potential benefits of tools. Whenever you are using any tool in SDLC, what are the benefits of using the tools? Then what are the risks of using the tools in SDLC? And what special considerations you should do before you adopt some tools like test execution tool or performance testing tool, any static analysis tool or test management tool. So you need to, before launching any of these tools in your organization, you need to do some special considerations for these kind of tools. So let's get started. So what are the potential benefits of using tools in software development lifecycle? So the first benefit is reduction of repetitive work. So as we have seen that testing is a tedious activity, and it's many times it's kind of repetitive activity. So repetitive work is very difficult to do manually. It's difficult to do repetition task again and again manually. And why it is difficult? Because people become bored if they have to perform same task again and again. So for example, in regression testing, it's kind of repetitive work, and it's repetitive because you have a regression test suite, and you need to kind of execute that test suite again and again in every release or build that you get. So same repetitive work is with setting up the test data in test environment. So if you're doing some test for one build of the software, one release of the software, you need to set up a large amount of test data, and then again in another release or another build you need to again set up that test data in test environment. So these are some of the repetitive work that are involved in the testing. So what tools help you to do is tools reduce the repetitive work that is involved. So tools can help you to set up the test data very quickly. Tools can help you to automate your regression testing framework, and you can execute that regression testing suite again and again any number of time and on any number of builds. So tools are helpful in such kind of situation. Then you get greater consistency and repeatability by using the tool. So why you get greater consistency? Because manually, even if you're doing same task again and again with exactly same steps, if you're doing it manually, it's not at all guaranteed that the next time you will do it exactly the same way. There will definitely be some variation in the setup. So when you are doing same task manually, the consistency cannot be guaranteed that the next time that you have done to set up the test data is exactly the same way that you did for the first time. But the tool provides you greater consistency. Tool will do same steps as you have coded in the tool or recorded in the tool. So tool can automate exactly same steps every time. So tools will have greater consistency, and it is beneficial to do a test environment setup. So tools are very beneficial when you are doing test environment setup. Then the third benefit is objective assessment. So for example, while reporting, person can make errors in test or defect reports. So the assessment of any report, for example defect report or test report, if a person is doing manually in the calculation or in finding out the matrix, he might make errors, but the tool will always give you a perfect and correct data for the report. So tool removes the subjective bias, and tool helps to do calculation and assessment consistently, so like code coverage, incident reports, etc. So tools do the calculation and assessment consistently. Then testing information is easily accessible. So by using the tool, test information is easily accessible. For example, large information is hard to understand if not presented in correct format. So suppose you have 500 different 500 test cases, and 400 of them passed, 50 of them blocked, so 50 of them failed. So all this data, if presented in a proper graphical or in the form of pie chart, makes it very easier to understand in just one look. So your test tools or the tools that you use provide this complex information in the form of charts, pie charts, graphs, which makes it very easy to understand that data. But if you are doing everything manually, it becomes very hard to form all those very useful reports which are easy to understand. And then tool help to present information in visual manner like charts, graphs, which are easy to understand. So testing information is easily accessible and presented in very nice and easily understandable format. Then what are the potential risks of using tools? So the first risk of using tool is unrealistic expectations from tool. For example, before introducing the tool, it is very important to do assessment and make sure it fulfills project needs. So most of the time what happens is whenever there is a tool introduction in an organization, people think that tool will solve all of their problems without any issues. So as soon as they deploy the tool, all the problems of regression testing or automation will be done automatically, and there won't be much effort required. But that's not the case. That's unrealistic expectation from the tool. So you should always have a set expectation from the tool, and you should know what a tool can do for you and what it cannot. So for that, you need to do proper assessment of the tool and make sure it fulfills all the project needs for which you are deploying the tool. As tool is also a software, you should not expect that just buying and introducing the tool will solve all the testing problems. So that's very important. You should not think in a way, and it's the responsibility of testers, senior testers, to guide the management that tool introduction won't just resolve all the issues, all the testing problems by just buying it. There is a lot more assessment, training, and implementation work involved in the tool to make it effective and fruitful as per your needs. So never have unrealistic expectation from tools. Having unrealistic expectation from tools is what is most risk thing when you are introducing a tool. Then underestimating the initial implementation time, cost, and effort. So whenever you buy a tool, it's not just that you will buy and it will be set up, implemented automatically, and everybody will be start using it from the next day onward. So should never underestimate the initial time that will be required to implement the tool, what will be the cost to implement the tool, what training requirements will be. So introducing new tool is not straightforward. It needs a proper planning, proper time needs to be allocated, cost need to be considered, what training is required. So all these factors need to be considered So this is another set of risk while you are introducing a tool. Then underestimating the effort required for tool maintenance. So initial implementation, and then once it is implemented, everything that you buy requires a maintenance, be it your car, be it your refrigerator, be it your microwave, any electronic device or any device that you buy at your home requires a regular maintenance. So same with the software that you buy. It's also a software, it's a tool, so it requires a regular maintenance. So you should never underestimate the effort that is required to maintain the software. So tool requires time and effort to maintain, so proper time and budget should be allocated for it. Then over reliance on the tool. So you should never over rely on the tool. Once you are doing the assessment, you should make sure what is fulfilled by the tool and what things can be achieved by the tool. You should never over rely that tool will solve all my problems. So there are situations where manual testing is more efficient than relying on the tool. Relying on tool for every project need is not good. So if you figure out that there's a manual test which is pretty complex and it won't be executed more than 2 times in the whole project, it's not required to execute that test more than 2 times, there is no need to automate that complex test, because it's easier and it's less cost. You'll utilize less cost to execute it manually rather than automating it when it is not required to execute that test again and again. Then missing skills to use the tools. So that's another. So skills required for using the tool might be missing from team. So suppose you have bought an automation tool which requires VB scripting knowledge and your team doesn't have that skill set. So you need to factor the time taken and the training required to upskill your team to learn that scripting language or the skills to use that tool. So need to scope the training to build the skills for tool usage. So all these are the risks which are there when you are introducing a tool to the organization. Then what are the considerations for test execution tools? Test execution tool requires good knowledge of programming skills. So the test execution tool has always a support for the scripting language, so it always requires good knowledge of programming skills. Then you should not rely completely on capture playback feature of test execution tool. It is used very minimal. So test execution tool has the feature of capture and playback, but you should not rely on this feature. It should be used for very minimal number of test cases. Then capture playback feature is useful only for few number of test cases. So suppose you have 5 test cases, 10 test cases, very basic test cases for doing a BVT, build verification test, then you can use capture playback, but it is not useful for any complex scenarios. Then capture playback can also be used if exploratory testing is being done. So capture playback feature is useful when somebody is doing exploratory testing because it keeps a record of the trail or the manual test steps that are being taken during exploratory testing, and which can be helpful in figuring out what steps were performed exactly when some issue was found. Then do not plan to execute regression testing using capture playback feature. So regression testing test suite should never be planned using capture playback feature, because capture playback just hard codes everything in the test, and every time you will re-execute it's most of the time it's gonna be failed. So you need to use some sort of scripting and programming language to build the framework, to design the framework, and use the automation, the test execution tool. So test execution tools are not script free. There are different scripting level in test execution tool. So whenever you are deploying test execution tool, these are some sort of considerations that you should always take care. So test execution tool are not script free though. There are different scripting levels, and your team needs to build those skills so that they can use different scripting level to make different automation framework and make automation more effective. So different scripting levels are linear scripts, which are like can be created manually by recording a manual test. So it will create just a linear script. Then structure scripts are created by using programming structures, a little bit of programming structure used. Then shared scripts are used, have a programming structure, use a scripting technique, and then one script is called by another. So that's kind of shared script structure. And then another framework is data-driven scripts and keyword-driven scripts. So in data-driven automation framework or scripts, you have test data in another file or spreadsheet, and there is control script or control code or class which reads data from that spreadsheet. That's data-driven framework. So data is in another spreadsheet, and control scripts read that data. And then in keyword-driven framework, you have all information about test stored in the file or spreadsheet. And then multiple control scripts describe the test cases described in the spreadsheet. So keyword-driven script, you have test case in your Excel spreadsheet format, and then there are multiple scripts that control those keywords that have implemented the behavior for the test cases that are described in the spreadsheet. So this is very basic consideration for test execution tool and the different levels of scripting that are supported by the test execution tool or test automation tool. Then there are what are the considerations for performance testing tool? Then performance testing tools provide inputs about the non-functional quality characteristics of software. So performance testing tool provide input about non-functional features, not the functionality, how the functionality works. So non-functional features like non-functional quality characters like throughput, what is the response time, such kind of characteristics. Then the aim of using performance testing tool is to find the characteristics like throughput, system resources being used, time taken for certain transactions. So these are kind of characteristics that are being provided by performance testing tool. Then before finalizing any performance testing tools for testing, it is important to know what a tool can do for you and what it cannot. Okay, so if you're considering a performance testing tool for your organization, you should be very well aware what are your needs from the performance testing, what you want to achieve from the performance testing tool, and then you should analyze the performance testing tool available in the market and finalize which best suits your needs. Then important consideration for performance testing tools are how load is generated by the tool. So how the load is being generated by the tool that you are analyzing, how the delay is being inserted to make load data more realistic. So what is the delay mechanism implemented in performance testing tool, how to report the performance data, how the performance data is being reported, and then if there is any performance bottleneck, then what are the features to narrow down that performance bottleneck and find the root cause why that bottleneck is happening. So these are some of the considerations for evaluating performance testing tool. Then what are the considerations for static analysis tools? So static analysis tools identify code issues and coding standards well in advance before code execution. So as we have seen that in static testing, static analysis tools are used. So static analysis tool analyze any issues with coding standards or with the code structure well in advance before even the code is executed. So you should not be stringently used on old code written years ago, as that might not meet the new standards and produce a lot of errors and warnings. So whenever you are evaluating static analysis tool, if there is code that is written 10 years ago and you are using a tool with latest technology, you should not use the static analysis tool on the code that has been written 10 years ago, because definitely the coding standards 10 years ago were different than the standards that we have right now. So if you use static analysis tool for the code that was developed 10 years ago, you are going to get a lot of warnings and errors for that code. So it's for static analysis tool, always prefer to use it on the new code which follows the current coding standards, so that you can make most use of it. Then it's good to use static analysis tool on new code, as it will find any code issues early in your code, and your code will be more maintainable. So never use static analysis tool for the old code. Whenever you are analyzing a static analysis tool, or whenever you have sort of implemented the tool in your organization and rolled it out, so whatever new projects are being launched, they should use static analysis tool to find the code issues with the recent standards, and once they start using static analysis tool, their code will eventually become more maintainable because it follows certain standard. Then the considerations for test management tool. So whenever you are launching a test management tool, so you may need to interface test management tool with other tools to make it more useful and fulfill your requirements. So test management tool has either a interface, either built-in features for defect management, requirements management in it, or it will have an external interface, or you can integrate it with different other tools, for example defect management. So whenever you are implementing test management or launching test management, it should have feature to interface with other tools to make it more useful. Then test reports produced by test management tools may not fulfill all your requirements. So it's not necessary that the tool the tool that you have bought for test management, the report that is generated, the default report that is generated by test management tools, fulfills all your needs. You might require some better kind of reports which may need to be like exported in Excel or in the form of graphs and pie charts or some different format. So you need to it should have the facility to export the data into Excel reports, and then you can manipulate data to form the pie chart or different kind of reports as per your needs. Then if it does not have a built-in incident management, product management and requirement management module, then it should be able to integrate with existing incident management or product management or requirement management tools. So suppose you have already standalone incident management tool, defect management tool, project management tool, then if you are launching a test management tool, you should make sure that the new test management tool that you are implementing has the ability to integrate with your existing incident management, project management, and requirement management tool. Then it's good to introduce test management tools once you have defined test process. So unless and until you have defined test process, it's not a good idea to introduce a tool. I mean, you can go ahead and introduce a tool, but then you have to more of follow the process that is defined by the tool, that is out of the box from the tool, which is not always the best or refined way of doing things, because as per your needs you can define your own process first in your organization. So once your whole test process is being defined, then you can analyze different test management tools and see which one fits perfectly as per the test process being followed in your organization. So it's always good idea to introduce test management tools once you have mature test process. If you don't have defined test process, best approach is to define your test process first, taking into account the test management tool you will be using, which will give you maximum benefits of tool. So in case you don't have the test process, so whichever tool you have analyzed and you want to introduce that tool, you take it into account and then define a test process first, which will make sure that you have included the benefit of the tool while you are defining the test process. So that way that tool, the benefit of that tool will be maximum. So to conclude, in this session we learn about what are the potential benefits of using tools in an organization, what are the risks involved if you are using the tool, and what are the special considerations for different tools like test execution tools, performance testing tools, static analysis tools, and test management tools when you are introducing these tools in your organization. Thank you.